have anything, but they have, I mean, like, it's not about money, but it's about like coming from different kind of levels in the society. Yeah? And so I think it's important to not only to meet, and also I don't think actually that I make a solution with the artwork I'm exhibiting. Yeah? But we should go beyond of this art. I think so, at least for me, of this art production or of this kind of images you're creating and the new language which you try to give the world. It's an egocentric way. Art is very egocentric, and I think it's important that it's also egocentric, and it's very it's all about me at first, like how you're seeing the world and reacting to it. But in terms of today, I think to make, to oppose actually this kind of yellings which are coming to us, it's not, maybe not from my perspective, it's not yelling back, it's not shouting louder than the others, it's being smarter than the others, it's being more subversive than the others, and it's being really something which has to do with connections and to be part of a bigger movement. So we've done the initiative Flags, actually Flags for Foreign Local Artistic Exchange. We had the aim actually at first to make cooperations between newcomers, I mean like artists in exile, not only visual artists, but like, well, in a broader sense, between the local scene, and see it also as a chance for the local scene to open actually their kind of cages, yeah? Like as me, like my studio, I mean, like it was always a place where it was a place just for me, and now it's a place where it's just open for everybody. I nearly have 3 or 4 times a week people who are coming and we're discussing things together, and this is something I think we have to change. That the museums shouldn't be the museums from the past. That our offices shouldn't be the offices from the past. That our communication shouldn't be like in the past. It should be more kind of open, and also with all their failings and all with their weaknesses which it has, because it's something which we have to learn actually to build up a kind of a stronger voice. And I think this come together today. It was something also what I was seeking for somehow. I mean, it was not so obvious actually, as I told you that before, but I'm sick actually to be marginalized. Yeah, marginalized. I'm sick about to be kind of how do you say, somebody of the rest. I mean, like somehow somebody of the few people who think maybe differently, who believe in love and in humanity and togetherness. Actually, it sounds maybe cheapness, but these are the things I'm really, I'm really like into it. And but how to have also a powerful voice in that, and I think one way is to create this kind of initiative and to act. I mean, it's not and to go further with that. And all this initiative, what I'm seeing now, I mean, and there are like hundreds. I mean, in the last years, maybe like a pop up from in Germany, which already like changed the way artists are working, but also teachers are working, or factory workers are seeing their roles inside of the society. And I think it's time to think about that, not only, but also to act and to cooperate. I'm not so sure now, but I think that's a really spontaneous thing what I have to say now here.
Just to introduce Rajeev Balasubramanyam, who's a writer based here in Berlin.
Hi, so I'm a novelist Good evening. I'm a novelist, and I grew up right in the center of fascist Britain in the 70s and in the 80s. Well, not that old, in the 80s mostly. And it was a very intense and very difficult time. The abuse was daily, you couldn't really walk down the street. There was swastikas drawn on the door, and this happened every single day. So for me, I find that Trump's election and Brexit have been experienced quite differently by people of color, like myself. I suspect in general that people of color were rather less shocked than white people, than our white counterparts. We experienced the shock of disappointment, yes, and the knowledge that things are about to get significantly worse. But what we didn't experience was what I call reality shock. We didn't experience a 180-degree shift in worldview. We already knew that racism can win elections. And we already knew that white people and whiteness are close to impossible to separate. And we already knew that racism is among the central organizing principles behind Western civilization, just as we knew that Muslims didn't invent terrorism. It's not to say that Trump's not unusual. He is unusual as a political phenomenon, and that he's almost entirely lacking political expertise, and he doesn't speak the language of political diplomacy. And he's openly racist. But Trump has always been there in spirit, behind all the smooth, grey-suited managerial rhetoric. He was always there. He was there during colonialism, and he was there during the slave trade, and he was there whenever the United States bombed or invaded a third world country for its resources. And he was there during the global assassination campaign. And we know this because of our experience of living in Western liberal democracies. That day-to-day experience of racist violence and verbal abuse and discrimination and stop searches and profiling at airports. We were never really under the illusion that we lived in liberal democracies. And now the political managerial class has begun to lower, if not to drop, its mask. And while people of colour tended to be well aware that these masks existed, many white liberals are still struggling to come to terms with it. Often because they're struggling to recognize the existence of their own masks. And as a result, they're experiencing this reality shock. And they're beginning to realize the truth of racism. To understand that what people of color have been saying for decades wasn't exaggeration or paranoid fantasy. And of course, many continue to deny it, and so we've got a lot of rhetoric right now about PC authoritarianism, the authoritarian regressiveness. Some of which isn't entirely baseless. But it's usually with the intention of attempting to screw the mask back on, often quite violently. I think the first thing that POC artists need to do is to realize that there's an opportunity right now to find an audience for narratives about our experiences, narratives that were previously suppressed. And that this opportunity might not come again for some time. So we have to make use of it. And we also have to protect our voices. I think, I may be misquoting him, but I think Jonathan Franzen recently said something in an interview like, racism is really in right now, or race is really in right now. And I know exactly what he's talking about. And actually what he's saying is, probably doesn't know he's saying this, but what he's saying is that if we don't tell our stories, he'll do it for us. And so it's time to be assertive. For POC artists in particular, it's time to be assertive. Which can be confusing because many of us have spent years practicing very careful self-censorship. Which many of us have found essential in order to survive. I think people of colour tend to self-censor every single day, often without realising that self-censoring because it becomes so natural. And this may be a good time to stop doing that. Maybe. It may also be a good time to resurrect earlier works. Because a friend of mine was recently saying that POC artists often find it difficult to find an audience because their work is ahead of its time. It's not what society is prepared to accept at any given moment. So if there's a work that didn't find an audience previously, now might be a good time to re-release it. I think the second thing that we need to do is to resist getting caught up in the hysteria and resist pointless debate. There's meaningful debate, there's important debate, and there's pointless debate, which is often on social media. I agree social media has its uses, but often on social media, and we have to resist expending unnecessary emotion or energy. We know that this is not a single battle. We know it will go on, though we can't just chop off Darth Vader's head and return to La La Land. Or in the sun. As Blair was saying in the New York Times a couple of days ago, return to the progressive centre, which is ridiculous because white supremacy won't end by going back to the Bush and Blair years, and there's all this sort of Bush-Blair revisionism at the moment. There's people who kill 100,000 people between them, and people saying that we should go back to that. And white supremacy won't end if we impeach Trump, and it won't end if we elect Hillary or anyone else. White supremacy's been around a long time, and it won't vanish overnight. But people of colour have been learning how to survive inside of it for a long time. And I believe that this is where our real strengths as artists lie. I think it has something to do with the difference between faith and hope. In order to live with the world as it's been for the last 200 years or so, people of colour have realised they can't rely on hope, on the belief that things can only get better, which was Blair's slogan. We know that things can get worse, or that they can stay the same for a devastatingly long time. And when they do, it's faith that enables us to survive. Faith is an acceptance of things, of the way things are right now. It's an acceptance that this is our reality, for better or for worse, and that on some fundamental level, everything is still okay. The last part often doesn't seem rational, and at times it appears insane. And that's why faith is so difficult to achieve and to maintain. But I believe a lot of us wouldn't even be here without it. This doesn't mean we aren't trying to affect change, whether incremental or revolutionary. And it doesn't mean that we can't have hope too. It doesn't mean we can't make satirical propaganda or polemics or calls to arms, or engage in direct action. However, if our art is grounded in even a relatively small measure of faith, this might help us to avoid an unhelpful didacticism. Because I don't believe that it's adding that much to the world to continually say that Trump is bad. Those who know it, those who don't know it, it's going to take more than that. And to avoid hysteria, one-dimensionality, and most importantly, fundamentalism. And I hope everyone knows what I mean by fundamentalism in the context of resistance.